Cool. We have quite a few people now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Great.
Awesome.
Okay, we'll get going. So hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for this week's SAI Nano Chat. My name is Fanyam Wendy, and I'm the co-director of the STEM Advocacy Institute based here in Boston. And every week we host these Nano Chats with founders and directors of really cool initiatives in science, technology, engineering, and math. And so these are not restricted to the US, around the world. And we ask them very basic questions about what they're doing, how they're doing it, and any data, basically everything in between, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We want to know and learn about it. And that way we can connect with them, see how we can collaborate, and connect with other organizations that are really doing some awesome things. So this week, we're super excited to have Mackenzie Lemieux. And really, it was just fantastic that she just emailed me, cold email, saying, hey, this sounds like a cool thing. Would you mind if I present it? I'm like, yes, of course. Are you free this Thursday? And she says, yes. And so what even made it more convincing for me was I didn't know anything about SAID and STEM. And so I'm like, yes, this is the point of these discussions, to learn more about such initiatives, especially this case here where it's really brand new. I believe the website is coming up soon. And then reading even the synopsis really for the organization, I wanted to learn more. And so SAID and STEM, students advocating for increased diversity in STEM. And I hope she'll tell more, but briefly, they hold these discussions, critical analysis of journal articles, talks from women in science. And so this was, I wanted to learn more. I wanted to learn more about what it is that they do or hope to do, and how we can connect with them. And so I want to pass it over to Mackenzie. And so the way this works, she'll have about 15 minutes or so to chat, give a presentation. You guys can absolutely interrupt, no problem. And afterwards, we'll have a full-on discussion where everyone can join in and can ask various questions. All right, so I will pass it on to Mackenzie.
Cool, thank you so much, Fanyam. Okay, so hey everyone, my name is Mackenzie Lemieux. I'm currently a research technician at the Salk Institute for Biological Studies in the lab of Dr. Kay Tai. We were formerly at MIT until April 1st this year. Which I moved from the East Coast to the West Coast with my lab to help them set up and continue their awesome neuroscience here on the West Coast. But today I'm going to tell you about a seminar series that I started at MIT in January of 2019 called Students Advocating for Increased Diversity in STEM. And feel free to ask questions or interrupt during any of this. Yeah, so there's a little bit, it might be a little bit over 15 minutes, but I'll try to keep it to 15. Okay. So before we begin, I just want to give you a bit of a roadmap of where we're going to go today. I'm going to talk a bit about the background of the program, why I started it in the first place, the goals of the program, and how those goals led to the development of the structure of the program, the results that I gathered after doing a little forum, and the future directions of the program here in San Diego. Okay, so to begin, basically SAID and STEM was a diversity seminar series that I started at MIT. It started in January. We held 7 sessions. There were 2 journal clubs and 5 guest lectures. And throughout the course of the series, we had increasing attendance. I'll show you some of the results later. But in essence, I just wanted to educate the community about bias, stereotypes, and share some stories of women and underrepresented minorities' experiences in STEM. And so the reason I started this program was actually because of an experience I had at an MD PhD conference this past summer. I was just presenting my undergraduate thesis, but I wanted to go to the Women in STEM breakout session. So I was sitting there and I see 3 men walk in the room and I was kind of surprised. I was like, oh, strange, it's a Women in Science breakout session. Why are there men here? But then my peers started to talk about their experiences of harassment and discrimination in the lab, in the clinic, and I was pretty appalled actually, and it was pretty eye-opening to realize that these are students from all over America, and these issues are pervasive across all institutions. And it made me want more men and just more people in general to be in this room hearing these stories. So after that, my goal became no matter what institution I'm at, I want to make sure that these stories are being heard by the community, just so that people know that even in 2019, there's still discrimination and harassment going on in our area of study. So having that in mind, students advocating for increased diversity in STEM, the seminar series that I started, had 3 main goals from this experience that I had. The first goal is to share these untold stories of bias and discrimination in STEM. The second goal is to teach the community about implicit bias, stereotypes, stereotype threat, these concepts you may have heard in psychology class, but I wanted to root them in reality. And then I want to start to change these implicit biases that people have in society, just because of us being immersed in a society that so often has male paired with science or white paired with science. I want to start to change these malleable biases that we have through immersion in a counter-stereotypical environment. Okay, so from those goals, I had 2 main aims. The first aim, educate the MIT community about these implicit biases, stereotypes, stereotype threat through data and research. And this is achieved through journal clubs and showing research and statistics from the past decades of women and minorities in STEM. And then the second aim was to begin to change the strong implicit bias people have towards male and STEM or white and STEM by highlighting the achievements of females, minorities, and LGBTQ scientists and physicians. And this is achieved through guest lectures. And as a neuroscientist, it's kind of fun to think about bias and how malleable bias actually is, because it's a learned association between 2 things. And if it's learned, it can obviously be unlearned or changed, because our associations change with our experiences in life. So it's kind of cool to be trying to impart this neuroscience knowledge to try to start to change neuroplasticity in the brains of the people in our community by immersing them in counter-stereotypical environments. Okay, so to begin, I'll run you through how I structured each of these journal clubs and guest lectures. So for the journal club, I began obviously with food. I think food was a critical component to this seminar series. I do a bit of an introduction, give a bit of an outline for the day. It's always good to have people know what's coming up. And then I would always give some facts, figures, and definitions that pertain to the article that we're about to review, just to give them some a basis for what we're about to discuss, and also some facts to follow upon when they're discussing their opinions of the article. And then I'd give them 10 minutes to review the article. Hopefully they had looked at this article the week prior when I emailed out the article. But we had 10 minutes to review alone, just in case. And then we'd come together as a group, and I'd have a PowerPoint slide that went over some key points and some thoughts about the article, just like a journal club for any kind of science talk would be. And this was really great. It really opened up some pretty important discussions. And I think since the group was small in the initial stages for the journal club, people felt really open and able to voice their opinions and ask questions about the articles. So the first article we discussed was an article by Dr. Ben Barris. He was an outstanding neuroscientist and really pioneered the field of glial research. He was formerly at Stanford. He unfortunately passed away in 2017 from pancreatic cancer, but the momentum that he started advocating for women in STEM, I feel the need to kind of pursue this momentum that he started, because he's an inspiration to me in his research on glial cells. So he, as a transgender neuroscientist, he actually experienced both being a female and a male in science. And so he has a very unique perspective and a fervent passion for advocating for women in STEM. So I focused on his article first. And then the second article we focused on was Dr. Nilanjana Dasgupta's article. And it was on the leaky pipeline. I'm sure many of you might know this term, but basically there's this pipeline that we think of as people entering STEM disciplines, and then the end of the pipeline is finally being this tenure track professor in STEM. But for women and minorities and LGBTQ individuals, there are leaks in this pipeline, as we like to say, where people tend to fall out or leak from this track because of certain pressures and certain problems along this career track. So her research, Dr. Dasgupta, she works at UMass Amherst in social psychology. She looks at what are the reasons why these leaks occur and how can we start to plug these leaks? What are the interventions we can do to stop this leak leading to stop this attrition of women in STEM? Okay, so then after the two journal clubs, we had 5 guest lectures, but 6 lecturers in total. And for each of these guest lecture seminars, I would start with an introduction again, obviously food, and then I would highlight a recent news or like a news article or an advocate for diversity in STEM, because I think it's important to root this series in reality in the day-to-day, and like things that are going on right now relate to what we're talking about and relate to these experiences that women in front of us are having. So for example, on the left here, we have Donna Strickland. She's a Nobel laureate in physics, and I highlighted her recent article. Her story is pretty interesting and caused a lot of passion in the Wikipedia community because her Wikipedia page was denied publishing on Wikipedia by a moderator because she wasn't notable enough. 4 months later, she wins the Nobel Prize in physics for her physics discoveries in these like chirp pulse lasers. And essentially, this kind of raised a ruckus. Like, there's a lot of bias going on in who we portray in the media and which people we see now on Wikipedia or on the internet as mentors and role models. And this created a lot of different events, such as like Wikipedia Ed-a-thons, to try to get more women on Wikipedia because they are notable enough. It's just that there is some bias in publishing and presenting their pages on Wikipedia and on the internet. Then on the top right here, we have Chika Stacy. She's a medical student at University of Toronto, and I showed her slam poem, and she talks about intersectionality, what the experience is like as as an African American and a woman in medicine, and how this impacts her day to day and the racism that she faced. And she has an incredible poem, and I showed that at the beginning of one of the seminars. And I think this just creates a space where we're open to people's experiences and how they're feeling, and it just creates a great environment, I think, to start off the guest lectures. So then after this news part of the guest lecture, I would go into an introduction for the guest speaker, and they talk about their career path or the science that they do, and then they'd go on to talk about the barriers that they faced in their career or how they advocate for women in STEM, or how they address diversity and inclusion in STEM in their careers. And the middle picture here is just me, Dr. Tai, my boss, and an awesome attendee of the 7 STEM seminar series, Rosita, a Malaysian postdoc. Okay, so just to go over the structure of the series a bit, in January, we had 3 seminars. There was the first, Dr. Ben Barris's article, Does Gender Matter? This addressed the kind of debate, I guess, that's going on right now, that some people think that it's innate gender differences that lead to a dearth of women in STEM. And Ben, using science and facts, refuted this hypothesis, this claim. And I think it was a really great article. And he tried to show us that, no, it is more the barriers that women face and the bias and the discrimination, not innate gender differences, that lead to a dearth of women in STEM. Then we moved to Dr. Dasgupta's article, Stemming the Tide, which talked about those leaks in the pipeline and how we can start to address those leaks. And then we had our first guest lecturer, Dr. Eve Martyr. She is a professor of neuroscience at Brandeis University and a former Society for Neuroscience president. And she talked about her experience in science. She talked about her some of her incredible discoveries and her experience as an eLife editor, and how eLife, the journal, addresses gender bias in publishing. Then in February, we had 3 physician lecturers, all from Harvard Medical School. And the first, Dr. Marcy Bolster, talked about basically the pull as you move on in your career and you're in a relationship. Is it the man or the woman that kind of gets to decide, or whose career gets the priority in terms of where you move, or like what the next steps as a couple are? And she addressed this concern. And then we had Dr. Mary Montgomery come in and talk about her experiences as an LGBTQ physician and the stigma that her HIV patients face in the Harvard Infectious Disease Clinic. I think this was pretty eye-opening for all of us, and we learned a lot about HIV that I don't think many of us knew, especially because most of us were neuroscientists. And then we had, lastly, Dr. Lindsay McFarlane, and she talked about maternity leave. She was just about to have a baby, and she talked about maternity leave and how much this varies across institutions and businesses, I guess, in America. I'm Canadian, and so I didn't really know this was actually how dysregulated a maternity leave was. And she was talking about how often it's senior women in your business or in your company, in your institution, like at the Brigham, that have established, let's say, 3 months paid maternity leave. And when women talk about working during maternity leave, these elder women feel as if that's a step backwards, right? Because they advocated for this time off to take care of their child, and now we're kind of taking steps back, trying to work during this time. So she addressed some of these concerns that I don't think many of us were aware of. Okay, and then in March, we had our 2 final lecturers, Dr. Edmund Bertschinger. He is the inaugural Institute Community and Equity Officer at MIT, and he talked about his experience previous to MIT as a civil rights activist, and he still is. And he talked about how at MIT, he's addressing inclusion and diversity in engineering and physics. And he highlighted a lot of the ways that institutions make change in diversity and inclusion. And I think one thing that really resonated with me was when he talked about in-reach versus outreach. And he was saying that often in-reach, when we reach into our inner circle and we get this group of people together to like fight or advocate for a similar cause, that's when we make change. And I think a good example is Nancy Hopkins at MIT, who was measuring out all of her lab space and realized that her lab space was much, like 50% smaller than that of other men at MIT, other like male professors. And she got 16 professors, female professors, together to go to the dean and advocate for more space. I think this is a great example of the more people, the better, fighting for change. And then lastly, we had Dr. Kay Tai, my boss, professor of neuroscience at the Salk Institute for Biological Studies. And she started by talking about her model of social homeostasis, which was received really well by the group. So we had attendees that were as young as like middle school, and they were even asking questions about social homeostasis, which was really cool to see. And then she moved on to talk about her experiences with sexual harassment in science, and also the day that she realized that as a female in science, she too has bias against females in science. And kind of on that grain of thought, I did the implicit attitude test with my group just to see what their range of implicit associations was between male and science. And so here we have all the results from 2003 to 2015 from the implicit attitude test, which you can take online, and it measures the strength of association between many things, but I chose between male and science. And you can see that this online community of people that take this test have a pretty unimodal distribution around moderate automatic association between male and science. And I was curious if my MIT community had a similar or different like structure of implicit associations. And it looked essentially the same, although my N is very small. It was hard to get people to actually take the test and report it back, but it's essentially the same, right? A essentially unimodal distribution around a moderate automatic association with male and science. And this is pretty interesting for people to see. And people, when they sent me their results, they were like, I'm really pissed. I'm like so mad that I have a strong or a moderate association between male and science when I'm a female in science, or I don't think I'm biased, or I try not to be biased. But it just shows the power of the social environment in shaping our thoughts, feelings, and actions. Okay, so now I'll go into the results quickly. So the attendance overall increased over the series. It started with like 10. It fluctuated a bit over the course of the series, but I pushed hard advertising for the last lecture, and Dr. Tai really attracted a lot of attendees, so it rose drastically. And then I took a poll of participant satisfaction. So I found that people overall had positive experiences with STEM and STEM. They had an enhanced understanding of the issues pertaining to diversity and inclusion in STEM. They felt more empowered to advocate, and overall felt comfortable asking questions. But when I delved into this slightly low stat a bit further, it seemed that the larger the group size, the less comfortable people felt asking questions. And I think it'd be interesting to find where that balance is between like a big group size so that you're reaching the most people, but still making sure people feel comfortable. Because I want to make sure this is still an open and inclusive space that people feel comfortable asking questions and addressing their concerns, because that was a major goal for me as well in creating this series. Okay, so then I wanted to show you three questions that I asked on the Google form that I sent out. And I chose like 3 representative quotes from attendees that kind of highlighted like the majority of the quotes. So people basically said that hearing the science and inspiring personal stories of women overcoming barriers was inspirational. Again, that addressed my concern of being able to share these stories. They said that they felt comfortable, speakers engaged in open dialogue. I think this is really good. And also that they liked the fact that we were able to analyze data, and analyzing this data and these research articles gave them a stance towards forming their own thoughts and opinions on the dearth of women and minorities in STEM.
So Mackenzie, I'm going to throw in the first question. Who's the audience here, very quickly? Who are you talking about?
Yeah, so basically the audience consisted of a range of students, faculty, like graduates, undergraduates, postdocs, MIT community members, research techs, some Harvard community members. And then in the end, actually, also some middle schoolers and high schoolers came out to the last couple sessions. And yeah, so it was a very wide range of ages and a very wide range of like career experiences in STEM.
I see. So in your previous figure, those were compiled from different, yeah, like here, who is filling out here? Do you know? Can you break them down if you have enough, or I'm assuming not?
Yeah, so in the end, 22 people filled out the form, and it was anonymous, so I'm not really sure who these 22 people were of the total people. But overall, each session, there is usually a range, at least between like some staff, some graduate students, some postdocs, and at least like one faculty and one high school student. So it was usually a range. So
I see. Thanks.
No worries. Thank you. Okay, and then I also asked what could be improved about STEM. Obviously, I want to make this the best series and like improve in the future. So people said that they wanted more advice on concrete ways they can advocate for women in STEM, women and minorities in STEM. And to address this point, I'm actually writing a blog post for Sister STEM on how you can start your own seminar series. Because I guess if I didn't give enough like concrete ways you can advocate, then you can read this blog post and learn how to start your own seminar series. Because not only is it a good experience for you to plan this type of event, it's a great way you can advocate and get your community together and create an open and inclusive space at your institution. So that'll be coming hopefully at the end of May once I finish my applications for MD PhD. And then people also said that maybe there could be a common set of questions that all speakers address, and then they go into their individual stories. I like that suggestion. I think that gives some perspective and comparison between speakers and how they deal with barriers and how they address equity and inclusion in STEM. And then also more diversity, specifically people of color. And this is something that I'll work on in future seminar series, as I'll talk about at the end of this presentation. And then the last one, this is pretty cool. I mean, pretty happy to hear some of these quotes. So people said their biggest takeaways were that diversity is crucial for success. We all have bias. I need to hear that my job right now is just to survive, and that there are allies at MIT that are willing to help. And I think that just shows that this is an environment that we created that taught people about bias and diversity and the importance of it, and also allowed them to feel comfortable and hear other people's stories and kind of validate their own concerns and their own feelings. So that was really cool to hear. Okay, so I know Faniel was talking about the challenges. There definitely were a lot of challenges, so I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I did this by myself, and so that was pretty hard. And especially as a research technician, I think I didn't have the like network that maybe a graduate student or a postdoc might have in an institution, but I reached out as far as I could and emailed a ton of people. But some of the challenges included achieving consistent high attendance. Obviously you saw my attendance trend there. It got higher near the end, but in the beginning I was usually stressed before each seminar because I worried that not enough people would be there. But one of my mentors at Harvard, AZA Alsop, he's actually graduating from his MD PhD this year and starting a faculty position at Yale. He told me, don't worry about how big the attendance is. Regardless of how many people come, you're still touching lives. And just the fact that this type of event is happening in the pick hour or at MIT, that's enough to start to like put out this energy towards making change. And him saying that really helped me to feel confident and just keep going. And it doesn't really matter if 2 people or 20 people show up, it's still achieving what it needs to achieve. And it'll get bigger if you keep advertising. I think it'd be cool to get faculty to attend. Not many faculty attended. I know it's hard with the timing, but I think it'd be good just to have faculty there to show that they care about these issues as well and to hear their thoughts. But yeah, this addresses the challenge of finding a time that works. It's tricky. I don't know if lunch or afternoon meetings are better, but I know afternoons are kind of hard with like childcare and family time. Lunches are kind of tricky because you're a bit pressured to get back to lab. So I guess I just poll your group to see what works best for them. I held mine at a time that worked best for the speaker, which ended up varying a bit. It varied between 4 p.m. start time and a 6 p.m. start time. 5:30 seems pretty good. It's kind of in between, and as long as you plan ahead of time, people can make arrangements. And then advertisement. So I just wanted to let you guys know the modes with which I advertise. I used Facebook, Twitter. I had my poster up on TV screens in the pick hour. What did I do? Oh, I went to classes and I talked to the different students in different classes, and I handed out bookmarks so that people had a physical copy of something that told them what days and what times the events were. So, and I put on some different calendars and sent emails to different departments so that they could put it on their calendars as well. Okay. And yeah, so basically in conclusion, I think Set STEM achieved a lot of the goals I set out for it. It taught the community about the dearth of women and minorities in STEM fields. It taught people about the impact of implicit bias and stereotypes. It also highlighted some of the achievements of women in science and medicine. And through Dr. Ed Bertshinger's lecture, told us about the steps that MIT is making towards cultural change. And I think MIT is doing a great job. So now just some future plans before I end this portion of the webinar. So now that I'm here in San Diego, no longer in Boston, I have some plans to continue Set STEM. So as I said, first I have a blog post coming out with Sister STEM, how to plan your own seminar series. That should come out by the end of May. I have a website coming soon, as Fenuel said, probably also end of May in a week or two. There's a Wikipedia edit-a-thon that I'm collaborating with a bunch of other groups to start, and it'll be on September 7th. And basically this is just to, as I talked about Donna Strickland, to try to put more women, minorities, and LGBTQ individuals on Wikipedia to start to change these implicit biases through one of the largest knowledge bases that exists. And I've been talking to the diversity department here at Salk in starting another seminar series. Probably this will be once a month because a couple times a month is a little hard to pull off, and you'll probably get more attendees if you just do it once a month. And I've been talking also to the graduate students at MIT about continuing Set STEM at MIT in the fall. I would maybe remotely help, but they would play out the stuff over at MIT. And then lastly, I just want to thank one of my biggest mentors, advocacy mentors, Farah Kaiser. She is a graduate student at the University of Toronto in molecular biology, and she has just been incredibly, incredibly helpful throughout this whole process. I heard her podcast because she hosted Wikipedia Edit-a-thon in Toronto, and she was interviewed by the Canadian Broadcasting Company, and I heard her podcast, and I was like, oh my God, I have to reach out to this girl. And so I emailed her, and she responded super fast, and she was super excited about the things that I had planned, and has been helping me with planning this Wikipedia Edit-a-thon, editing blog posts, helping with my website. Any times I was like freaking out about the seminar series, she usually eased my stress. So thank you so much, Farah. I think she's tuning in right now. So thank you for all your help. And yeah, so that's all I have. Thank you for listening. And you can reach out at my Twitter, soon my website, and Facebook.
Cool. Thank you so much, Mackenzie. So guys, this is where the fun begins now. Okay, that was great. What we'll do now is really just dive into what was said, things that did not make sense, and some things that we want to learn more about. You know, and I'm glad to hear the website will be coming out soon. So I just want to throw out the first question, Mackenzie. Do you envision Set STEM becoming an organization of sorts and doing these diversity-related seminar series across the country? Like, what is the vision of Set STEM?
Yeah, so I actually do envision it being more of a widespread, like, nonprofit type thing. I was talking to another research tech that was previously at MIT, and he's starting with another postdoc at Vanderbilt, and he was like, I want to start this at Vanderbilt. And so that would be incredible if I could get enough motivation in the people at remote locations to start a Set STEM seminar series there. I think the trick is often I find that, like, because it was like something I started, I'm the most, like, passionate about trying to keep it going. and I'll see what my bandwidth is like for organizing it abroad when I try to help organize the one at MIT. But if that goes well, then I am super excited about the potential of it happening at other institutions. And I think if it happened at Vanderbilt next, that would be really cool. I don't know if Alex is tuning in, but he was a previous research tech that I worked with at MIT, and starting it at Vanderbilt would be dope, and hopefully spreading from there.
And who is doing this actually? Do you know who are your, not competitors, but who else is doing it in this fashion? Or are you kind of the only one, or one of two or something?
I guess like in general, there are diversity seminar series. I know there's one, it wasn't necessarily diversity, it was just more like of a career panel that happens at a bunch of institutions. And I honestly forgot the name of it, but I saw it recently. And it was like bringing people in to talk about their career and like the struggles of being, like having a career in science. I think that's similar, but I'm not sure if it necessarily has the same like journal club, maybe like research data spin that I try to put into it, making it applicable to scientists in that way.
Yeah, because in your audience, you have such a diversity of audience, right? You said you have a middle schooler all the way up to professors. I mean, is there a target population you're actually trying to impact? Or is it, like, yeah, how you, because what the faculty would hear is one thing, but what the public, I'm assuming, also can attend these, right?
Mm-hmm.
As well. So they're also listening for very different things. How do you meet people in the middle, or are you trying to meet them in the middle? Your target population?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I'm still kind of like grappling with that myself. I think it's really powerful when there is such a wide range of attendees. When there was middle school students all the way to faculty at the two last seminars, I think it was cool to hear middle school students asking questions about like harassment in STEM, and like having exposure to this, and like having a middle school student there, and then also having a postdoc there listening to their questions. It's like, I think it's a really powerful environment, and makes it maybe more open and inclusive to like all kinds of views and all kinds of experiences. Initially, I think I was focusing on just undergrads and graduate students, but I was excited that more people were excited about joining the seminar series. And I do a lot of outreach to high school students. And I figured that if they're continuing to pursue careers in STEM, they should know about at least like biases and stereotypes and what goes on, because they're the next generation of advocates, and they're the next generation of leaders. And there's no way we can really change the future unless the people coming into the pipeline are also aware of these things. So yeah, I think I like the idea of it being like more widespread in the population that it attracts.
Okay. So guys, if anybody else has questions, please just jump in, or else I'll just keep talking. But please jump in if anybody else has a question. And make sure you unmute your mic first. Oh, so there's a question here. I don't know if you can see it, Mackenzie, from Peter Volbrecht. So what are your thoughts on white male faculty members trying to drive this type of program? This is something that I find to be really important, but always hesitate to drive the program.
Interesting. So I personally think it's awesome, because another one of the mentors I've had in this process, Mark over at University of Alabama, Birmingham, he is a white male, and he started it's at the Association of Advocates for Women in Science and Medicine over at UAB. And it's like with the MD PhD program. And he started it because he heard his peers, kind of like how I experienced at the MD PhD conference, he heard his peers talking about these experiences that they had in the lab and in the clinic. And he was really motivated to share the stories and try to make change. But he started a conference instead where people get to present science and also hear faculty and people in STEM fields talk about these experiences and ways to advocate and brainstorm ways to make changes. And so I think it's really important to have white males in the room, like leading, listening, and they're the ones that are in the position to make change often. I think that their voices are sometimes more heard than the people that are being underrepresented in STEM. And so I think it's also important to start to do these things just so that it becomes normal too. Like when I saw 3 white males come into the Women in STEM session, I was surprised, but I shouldn't be surprised, because that's an issue that is a societal problem. So it should be everyone that's worrying about it and everyone that's trying to make a change. So I think it'd be great if we had more white males starting seminar series like this, because it would start to make a statement that they care about it too, and that it should be a problem that everyone is concerned with. I don't think people would be upset about that.
Yeah, Peter, thanks for that. I shared a link with everyone. This is Growing Up in Science. It's an initiative with a faculty member, Weiji Ma at NYU, whom I recently connected with. And they are doing these sessions just similar to yours, but they are getting faculty into rooms, and then they basically don't throw away the science, but they get them to talk about like them as human beings in science, and not necessarily about the science. And so he's been doing this around the country. And so I think you should totally just look at his model, and it's him. He's doing this by himself, and he has different chapters around the world actually now, where locally they run them. So do you envision that, like basically you would have chapters of SED and STEM in different places?
Yeah, I think that'd be really cool. And it was I think a week ago that I saw Growing Up in Science. I found it serendipitously online. I was like, oh my God, this is like exactly what I envisioned. And I initially thought it was like the same as SED and STEM, and I was like, oh my God, we should just collaborate. But it's like a little more about like the career than the like diversity in STEM type thing. But I still think it's a great model for what I envision SED and STEM to be in the future.
Yeah. Any other questions? Question from Ed, and guys, you can jump in also just using your mics too. So this series was a huge accomplishment. I'm going to read these so that way people who listen to this later can, if they can read the question. This series was a huge accomplishment. You did an amazing thing. Had you ever done something like this before? Did you have a model for this before you began? Either way, your experience is a great model for others.
Yeah, so I had never done this before, and it was kind of like it was an experiment in itself. The scientist that just kind of was experimenting the entire time, but I reached out to a lot of people, and I think like I got really good at writing emails, because I emailed a lot of people just to ask like, hey, like how do I go about, like what are the best ways of advertising? Like I asked Farah a lot of these questions. I reached out to some of the other graduate students and like postdocs in my lab to see if they had done things like this. I talked to Mark a lot over at UAB, because initially I thought I was trying to hold a conference, and then I realized that if I'm moving to San Diego, I wanted to quickly kind of make a change at MIT before I left. And I was like, oh, hey, a seminar series is probably better. And I just tried to like outline what my goals were and then figure out how I was going to achieve those goals, kind of like how I do science. And I figured, well, if I want to educate the community, then I have to have some journal clubs. And like I find journal clubs go well in our science discussions in my lab. And there were, and then I wanted to bring in some community members, some like local scientists and local physicians in order to talk to the people at the pick hour. But no, I'd never done anything like this before. And I think I just emailed people and got comfortable emailing people that I didn't know, but that were doing things that inspired me and that were similar to how I wanted SED and STEM to run. And I asked for their advice, and I just felt it out as I went along.
And it's just you, basically? You have a team?
No, it was just me. People often ask, they're like, oh, like, can I join the SED and STEM committee? And I was like, the committee is me. But yeah, I was trying to find some people, but I think it's tricky. I was like kind of pushing at a pretty fast pace. And yeah, here at Salk though, I am collaborating with more people, and I've like put the time into trying to find people that also want to help run these seminars. And like the Wikipedia Editathon, there's no way I could do that on my own. I definitely need the help of like 500 women scientists. And
yeah, definitely encourage you to reach out. So next week we'll have Scientista, the director of the organization. I don't know if you heard about them, and they will talk about what they do and how they approach their problem. So I want to go back to your goals. Actually, you mentioned them. Could you go back to that slide? Actually, what the goals are, because a huge thing that we always deal with is we try to grapple is what is the goal and is it measurable? What exactly are you measuring, right? Because this is a thing where if you're going to go for grants and so forth, you're going to be able to articulate what is the problem you're trying to address, and here are the goals, and here's what I'm going to measure. So could you just walk us through again a little bit, and what are the measurable things? You showed us some data there, but what are some other measurable things that you think will showcase your impact? of Set and STEM?
Yeah, I guess one thing that I wished I did was see if I changed people's implicit biases by having them do the IAT again at the end of the session.
Mhm.
And I didn't have a chance to because I was trying to move myself across the country. But and then I wasn't sure also if having done the IAT 3 months prior or 2.5 months prior would bias their results. So I'm still trying to think of a way to see if I actually changed people's implicit biases, because that was kind of my goal. And I have seen data from Dr. Dasgupta that shows that after a year of being at a single sex school, like being at an all girls school like Wellesley, for example, when people are tested for their implicit association between male and science, it's actually weaker. And seeing that, I think I should just reach out to Dr. Dasgupta and ask if I can maybe get some of the way she tested that implicit association, because if that happens in a year, I was kind of curious to see if maybe over 3 months of being in a counter stereotypical environment, if that started to change people's implicit biases, or if this lasted longer, maybe like 5 months of seminar series, if that could start to change implicit biases by having them do a test.
Yeah, so Peter is asking a question. So he can't jump in because it's in a common area. That's why he's asking this question. So he's saying, if you bias the result, even by making them take the test, isn't that making a big difference?
He said it is or isn't making a big difference?
Isn't that making a difference? Isn't that making a difference? If you're biasing the results, even by making them take the test.
Yeah, I guess like you're still saying it's like still a good idea to have them take it another time.
So it's like just getting them to take the test changes their views, like that in itself, right? Because then you become aware, right? Peter is basically is that you become aware, all right, of these things from taking the test. And he's
definitely. No, definitely. I think so. I guess that in itself would maybe highlight. I don't know if it would let them like bump down from like a moderate to a weak association, but that'd be, I think, really interesting to test.
Yeah. So do you have an IRB to do this, by the way? And
no.
Stuff like no, okay. You may want to look into that. Just be careful with such data like this, okay? Because you're sharing it, and I don't know if you think about publishing it and so forth. But for internal use is one thing, but if you're trying to get it out there, it's completely another dimension. So go back to your goals again. So if you go back, sharing untold stories. So is it that they come in, like I'm trying to think of setting STEM as an intervention in a way, right? Typically you go in, you do something, and then something else happens, right? In this case, they're coming in and they're doing this series. How long is the series? Is it like 3? They come back and they see each of the like the journal clubs or the talks. Like what is the intervention piece, like the middle piece, what they're doing, at least for a regular person?
Yeah, I guess so it was structured as like 2 journal clubs first, and then like afterwards 5 guest lectures, I think.
Okay. So 2 journal clubs, 5 lectures.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then one of the lectures had actually 2 speakers in it.
Okay, and then the person comes. They first see 2 journal clubs, right? Mm-hmm. So they see the 2 journal clubs and then 5 lectures. These people coming back for every single of those sessions?
Yeah, there was at least I would like to say 10 pretty consistent people, 9 pretty consistent people that came back. There was a little bit of a lull in January because it was like the independent or like the IAP session at MIT, so like a lot of students were gone. Mm-hmm. But there was a consistent group of people that came for each session, and that was kind of like my goal, to have people consistently come just to like learn about like these things like stereotypes, bias, and then like relate that to each of the guest lectures and kind of like start to grow their knowledge of like the types of things that go on
Yeah. Okay. Because I think it would be awesome to just see that. I'd love to get a slide just to showcase, like, okay, this is the module, right? If someone wants to duplicate what you're trying to do, hey, you do 2 journal clubs, 5 lectures with Wei Ji Ma, for example. So at NYU, he does basically, it's a once a month thing, right? Mm-hmm. And different people come. So which makes it a challenge, right? If they have to come back 2 journal clubs, 5 lectures, it's hard for someone to come consistently, right? That's why you're getting 10 people right? Do you envision, I mean, are you dynamic there? What are you thinking about it now? Are you going to keep that? Does it
Yeah, so
work?
that's why, yeah, that was pretty tricky to keep a large attendance. I think I pushed it kind of hard trying to do so many sessions per month.
Mhm.
I think it'd be more beneficial to do it like the growing up in science and have one per month or maybe like two per month. I think people would be more motivated to come if it's like a bit less frequent. I would still, in that case, I'd have to restructure. I would definitely think of restructuring the program to maybe alternate between a lecture and a journal club, because I think it's still important to have people be reading the literature, because there's a really a wealth of literature on bias and stereotypes and like interventions right now to address the dearth of women and minorities in STEM. And I think as scientists, because that tends to be the group that I guess I'm interacting with most, that is I don't know, it appeals to them. So like, journal clubs are kind of fun to do, and like talking about our thoughts and opinions of the journal and what we can do with that information is pretty powerful. So I think in the future at Salk, what Mallory and I, the head of diversity here at Salk, are thinking is that we'd have a monthly seminar, and it would alternate between journal club, career type panel, and a single guest lecturer.
Okay, and this would be for the scientists there at Salk, right? The public wouldn't be able to come to this, I'm assuming. Or
so I'm talking. I want it to be for the public as well. I want
that'll be a challenge though. Just keep in mind that the public it's a different population entirely, right? When you incorporate that, but it's doable. Just keep it in mind in terms of what the outcomes will be and what they will expect versus what the faculty will expect. Different dynamic entirely, right? Especially when you talk about careers and so forth.
I guess I was thinking like in terms of public, like I would hope that UCSD students would come. So like not just Salk, but like also like the affiliated UCSD students.
Because when I say public, I'm talking about like the non-scientists.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking of keeping it more towards just like the communities of Salk and UCSD.
Okay, so that's the thing where you definitely have to articulate that carefully. Like when you say you had like young kids show up, right? That's a very different group of people that are there. And because as you said earlier, could you become a conference, right? Maybe this is a course you're developing. Another question here from Ed: does the Salk have a diversity committee? And if so, they might help take charge of this, right? To help you, because I think you're definitely think about it the right way, and also lead parallel initiatives such as creating an equity, diversity, inclusion statement. So does Salk have a diversity committee? Do you know?
Yeah, they do. I think it might just be one person right now, but Mallory Zayslev, I've been talking to her, and she's like head of diversity here at Salk, and we've been communicating about starting the series. But it'd be through the diversity department here at Salk, and I would just be kind of like helping her through like I don't know, things that I learned from holding SED in STEM would help us like form the one here, and I think we would call it scientists advocating for increased diversity in STEM instead of students. But yeah.
Because that would be an interesting model. I think following up on Ed's question, you could imagine that if you could create a package of sort that you can take to departments, right? Like my department, for example, and say, hey, I've designed this thing. I think if you are interested, I can teach you how to run it for yourselves locally, right? And that's something that I think would be of interest, whether you go around and train the people there to run these sessions. And I don't know if you think about a business model, even as a nonprofit, you certainly have to think about a business model. How are you going to fund this, right? Because it's great to do it now. You think about going to school. These are things you got to think about as well on that front. But is that something you've thought about, like basically creating that? What is that package you can then send to like us, because the journal club, and just give us like, here's how to do the to-do list.
Yeah, no, I honestly had never thought of it as a package before, and I think that's awesome to think about. I think that's how I'll try to like shape my thoughts about SED and STEM from now on. Like, how can I make it the most like packageable, like in like IKEA instruction list, like how to build this seminar series.
Right. And Ed was saying, yes, the package module is a great idea for one. Departments are often looking to pick and choose, and because they're so busy and stuff, they just want something that they almost plug and play. Simple instructions, just like imagine an Apple iPhone. I know it can swipe, a 2-year-old can use it kind of thing, right? a module of sorts. And in that way, then you have to think about who are you, right? And I think that's always a question. Who are you? What are you trying to do? And how do you compare to other initiatives that are already there? There's lots of initiatives out there, right? And I think you got to think about who can I collaborate to that can plug in this thing into what they're already doing. Right? I think you certainly have to be, I've learned to be open to those possibilities, because then you can really enhance, and you don't have to do everything from scratch, right?
Yeah.
It's great to run your own website. It's great to struggle from the bottom. However, if it's necessary, I don't think it's necessary every time. And so definitely, I mean, I'm going to open the door for SAI definitely to think about how we can help you think through this as well, and in our connections, just not even just the US, around the world as well, because this is something I think is important everywhere. Any other questions, guys? Please feel we have some time, so just jump in and ask if you want.
Thanks so much, Ed, for your comments and suggestions and questions. Yeah, I guess like on that line, I definitely, because of the struggles of doing it on my own for the Wikipedia editathon, I've extensively tried to collaborate with people that have run them before and gotten advice from Sarah as well. But with 500 Women Scientists in San Diego, and also the Geisel Library at UCSD, they've both held them before. And so I can kind of do the lifting of bringing people together, bring different SALC and the San Diego Science Writers Association, bring these people together, and then kind of structuring how I picture the editathon. But with their experience, it'll be super helpful to run it with their experience and funding and space. So. Right.
And with you going to school, MD, PhD students, so what's going to happen to SED and STEM? Are you going to keep doing it, or?
I really hope to bring it to any institution that I attend.
So you take it with you. Okay.
Yeah, but it would be obviously a lot easier if I had it as a package, like you're talking about. And I think that's probably gonna be one of my goals moving forward, is to try to package it up and make it repeatable.
Yeah, and this is something that we're doing for our SAI fellows in our place, where we basically work with them and talk so how can you break this down into its modules, into components, right? And we spend a lot of time thinking about, okay, what is the question? What is the problem? And we dig it out. And sometimes people stop there, right? Because they realize the problem is, they actually don't know what the problem is they're trying to fix, And so you have to spend time digging through that. And so again, we are very open to engaging with you and thinking more about that, and then the components, and then the output, for example, what is a really clear output? The IRB thing I mentioned, certainly being an institution, just talk to someone there to figure out what the rules are and who you need to talk to do these kind of surveys, because that data is, sensitive for some people. I had another question here. The package, I think, another comment from Ed. I'm happy to encourage and help. Seeding efforts like this at the institution, department level is an effective way to promote change, and it advances your own leadership. Okay, and note that you're also a mentor and inspiration for others. You may not even see it yet. So encouraging them can help advance systemic change. Okay, so I think I agree with this sentiment comment here, that I think initiatives like this, you definitely have to keep it going. It's critical that you engage other people, build a team. It's easy to try to do it all yourself. Very, very easy. But I think when you collaborate with other people, engage other people, you can continue and sustain this, right? Because the danger is always, you can easily start something quick and then it dies away.
Yeah.
How do you keep it going and finding that energy? And so connecting on Twitter, I think, is going to be good. I believe you're already there. And working with departments and your own program to say, okay, how can we make this sustainable, right? Because what's your funding situation? How are these funded?
It wasn't really funded at MIT because I was a little pressured for time. But here in San Diego, it'll be through SALC and through the other collaborators that I'm with. I'm also applying for a couple grants right now for outreach type things.
Okay. Probably the ASCB one. Did you apply to the ASCB one? American Society of Cell Biologists, if you remember. Yeah. So they have an outreach grant. They have the Compass outreach grants. So I'll repeat that: the Compass Outreach Grants, and deadlines are 31st and another one in August sometime. So check those out, because that's basically up to $1,000 of money to do this. But yeah, other places as well to think about. So Scientista next week will be here, and you can get some insights there, because they do a conference. So their approach is conference, and I attended it this past April at Harvard, and it was just phenomenal to see how they've grown over the years. Other places as well, of course, funding. Of course, you're looking for that. Lots of it out there, different sizes. Takes time, and in your case, I guess it will go through Salk, right? So
and through my lab as well. I know my boss is very like, one of her ideas of moving to Salk was to help try to change the culture here, and so she's really supportive and very excited about all of this. All this stuff, so.
Yeah, and definitely do think about those measures that you're thinking about. Like, what are those measures that you can, like the things that you can measure that you can show impact, right? From attendance to even if it attitudinal changes. I would even push and say, what else can you look for? What else that is easily measurable that you can extract, right? And you can know that you're doing something to these individuals, right? The earlier comment about even taking that test isn't as effective enough. You can even ask the very, very basic question: how many people have taken this test before, right?
Yeah.
The simple goal would be, let's get more people taking this test, right? Could that be in itself something? We have had X number of people take the test.
Yeah.
So just look for anything you can measure. Like, just measure everything, right? Because that you don't know what they will show you. Just collect it and then figure out how to analyze it later, right? How many people are taking it? Where are they from? Who is there? For your internal, you're not trying to publish stuff, like inside, so you know what's happening. And just another comment here for nonprofit status. If you decide to go that route, and I think you definitely have to think deeply about whether that's the way to go. It's a process. It's a long process, and it's very involved. So just a heads up warning. So that's one option. The other option is to incorporate what you're doing into an already existing entity, right? There's so many nonprofits nowadays, which I think is too many. And how can you collaborate with them and be able to not worry about the whole nonprofit thing, because that can suck up so much time. And that's speaking from experience.
That's very thing.
Yeah, because we have it now, the nonprofit, but it takes a lot of time to maintain it and making sure that everything is running operationally and then good. So I share it. I was in grad school and did the same thing. Didn't do the nonprofit, but I did the group. We really organically grew over time to SAI, to what we are now, all volunteers and engaging people like yourself. So with that said, any other final words, Mackenzie? This was a great discussion. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. I guess, like, if anyone listening ever wants to, like, collaborate or thinks that they have any suggestions or anything, I'm always open to suggestions and collaboration and chatting about the seminar series and how it went. Yeah, I guess if you're in the San Diego area on September 7th, come to our editathon, because it should be a pretty fun event. I'm excited to learn how to edit on Wikipedia.
Yeah, send us whenever you're ready, the blurb, whatever. We'll certainly blast it on social media. We're happy to promote whatever you're doing.
Thank you.
Also, get those modules out. I think it's a bit of excitement to see those modules, right? If you can compress them into that and seeing, hey, this is something that you can plug into your existing organization. Do look into the National Research Mentoring Network, the NRMN. They have this modular business components that I was talking about, and they have for them, mentoring is what they focus on in approaching diversity, and so it's really cool model, but I really like, and they go the entire pipeline from undergraduates all the way to faculty.
Amazing,
including administrators too. So they don't leave anyone out. So with that, I want to close the session. Thank you again, Mackenzie, for joining us today. I just want to let you know this was recorded. We'll post this up on YouTube so that other people can learn and continue to learn about STEM and STEM. And next week, as I mentioned, we're going to have the director of the Scientista Foundation who would come and talk about their conference that they run. And so that would be exciting. I hope Mackenzie can join, because I think they also
Yeah.
have a very unique way of thinking about things. And even from meeting them, I'm like, wow, this is really fascinating. And the week after that, we're going to go to Nigeria, and we're going to meet some new initiative that's taking place there in science as well. So this will be exciting. I'm looking forward to traveling the world, and hopefully you guys can join the ride as we go through. Mackenzie, again, thank you so much. Everyone else, thank you. Bye.
Thanks.